Here's Brody Brazil.
If it feels like I'm starting to amplify or kick up my Rays coverage here on the channel, I absolutely am, because we are quickly approaching a very hard deadline. March 31st, it's got to be decided. Are the Rays in or out on the new stadium proposal and project? The city and county are both all the way in. They've committed the funding for it, but the Rays have to complete those checklist items by the end of this month. There's also a lot to be sorted out by the end of this month with Tropicana Field. Is it going to get funded? Is it going to get the commitments to start repairs so that a baseball season can ever happen there again or not? So by the end of this month, we've got some pressing issues, and that's why, here in the meantime, I'm going to start bringing up this topic a lot more because it is important. I think we should all be paying even more attention to it than we have been. But this video is all about 5 educated guesses I have on the Rays. And I want to be clear here, nothing is factual in this video. This is all educated instinct from my perspective. Now, why would I do something like this? I'm typically somebody who likes to take fact and then react to that. But I feel like the educated instinct I can provide here might give some ideas to what's actually happening behind the scenes right now and what might happen in a couple weeks' time. I've been following basically now every development in Tampa and St. Pete and elsewhere regarding the Rays for a couple years now. It's funny how fast that happens. Feels like just yesterday I attached myself to this story, and now I'm a couple years deep in it. I realize it has been going, the story has, for even longer. I've got some experience with a baseball team and a city and a county and Major League Baseball as a business and everything that happened in Oakland. And I'm not saying that every situation is identical, but I've got a pretty good read and feel on how these things happen these days. So whether it was with the A's or Oakland or Alameda County or Major League Baseball, and again, just some of what happened in Oakland and currently with Sacramento and Las Vegas, like there are some comparisons to be made and had between the A's and Rays in these situations. And then last but not least, experience in covering all the other teams across different leagues, and look at the Arizona Coyotes turned into the Utah Hockey Club. That was about a year ago. That was a volatile situation down in the desert for a couple years. So I've got the background and experience to put together what I think is some educated instinct on this situation. So my 5 things begin like this. Number 1, it very well could be that the Rays simply got cold feet on this stadium project, and they started to use the delays of a month or 2 on approvals to put out the idea that they couldn't pay for it anymore, and then all of a sudden things would cost $150 million that wasn't in their budget on a $1.3 billion stadium project. But that doesn't mean at one point, like, they did put in all the effort and they had the commitment into the new stadium plans. And I don't think any business in their right mind puts out the slogan and the branding and does their own podcast on here to stay. Like, at one point, let's be clear, it was never their intention this entire time to not stay in St. Pete or to maybe even build a stadium in Tampa. And I'm not saying that all of that won't happen, but I'm saying as it relates to this very specific stadium project at the gas plant site between Pinellas County and the city of St. Petersburg, they were all in on this. This was their idea, right? So it's not like they have been bad about this the entire time. They just got cold on it. And things since, like when they came up with this idea, when they planned it out, when they did all the renderings and all the hype and had a press conference, you don't do all of that with the expectation that you're going to back out of it. But things since then have either settled in, like the cost or the change of business or the industry, or maybe their revenue is not the same as it used to be. The situation either changed or obviously it got worse. And I mean the situation where the Rays couldn't benefit from doing this new stadium as much, or they're not in the same position to build as they once were. And whether it's inflation or tariffs or the interest rate going way up, remember, they're probably going to have to borrow some money to get all this done, or maybe the location, the realization of St. Pete versus ultimately what they heard and looked across the way at Tampa and said, you know, Eber Harbor is the way to go here. Or again, maybe just their business changed. So my point is, as much as the Rays are deciding right now whether to go all in on this, whether to bring in extra investors on this or not, that could be the side story here. The main root issue could simply be this. What was once their idea, what was once their good idea, is no longer something that they're hot on. They've got cold feet. They got cold feet on this. And as much as they built it up and pushed it through, now that they're here at the very end, and it requires commitment, and it requires some items being done by the checklist time of March 31st, some initial payments, some moving forward, maybe this is the point where the rubber meets the road, and they're not ready to drive yet. Here's another thought. The Rays probably don't want Tropicana Field fixed. I mean, look, none of this was their doing. None of this was them asking for a hurricane to come through. Hurricane Milton ripped the roof off. But if Tropicana Field gets fixed, the Rays would be pressured to stay there at this point because they're missing a year, right? And the way their lease works is that every year that they miss, another year gets tacked on to the end of that lease. So it seems like right now, at the very shortest, they'd be pressured to stay there until about 2029. Now, if they had other ideas or ambitions, this kind of handcuffs them into staying at Tropicana Field if it gets fixed. And wouldn't they rather use this broken stadium as leverage to get out of that old stadium and into something new, whether it was something in Tampa or St. Pete or, dare I say, elsewhere? And we will talk about Orlando in just a second, but they'd rather use this stadium, broken stadium, as kind of leverage. And that's unfortunate. To use a natural disaster and what happened and workers being displaced and jobs being displaced and a facility now that needs maybe $60 million of repair. And they kind of get to use that as leverage to say, well, that's not even an option. So now we really need something. Now this really puts the pressure on everybody else here. If you want to keep us, you've got to get something done. And I do feel like that if Tropicana Field were to get fixed, and even if the Rays didn't pressure anybody to do this, if St. Petersburg really does have to pay for it, and remember, it was, I can't remember if it was the county or the city that had reduced the insurance amount on the stadium like weeks or months before the hurricane hit. So now they're on the hook for basically paying most, if not all, of the $60 million. But the public money paying $60 million to fix up the stadium, the Rays will always feel guilted about it. Maybe they'll feel guilty or not, but they will be guilted by the public. Like, wait a second, the public had to pay for the Rays stadium to get fixed, and then they're going to use it for a couple more years. And again, I don't know that the Rays want to be there necessarily ever again, but the public will always have that sentiment towards the Rays, even if they didn't want this, if the Rays ever go back and play there and the public had to pay to make it happen. This is all kind of like a totaled car. And there are some cars you have that you love over the years, and it kind of goes and grows with you, and it's an old car, and you've loved every moment of it, but when it gets totaled, there's a time where the cost to repair it is nowhere near the price and the value of the actual car remaining. And so this is like fixing a totaled car, essentially $60 million to do whatever they need to do at Tropicana Field. Again, I don't think there's any way that the Rays want the Trop fixed. No matter, even if they talk about, hey, fix this up, we'll come back and play there, I don't think that's what they want at all. This is educated instinct here. Here's another item for you. The city of Tampa, I think, this is my educated instinct, city of Tampa has likely reached out. And I say reached out, what does that mean? Some level of discussions, at least officials from the city letting the team know that they're still interested in talking about the Eber Harbor site. Tampa likely sees themselves as a better fit. Now, I don't know if they can do the same deal like obviously St. Pete and Pinellas County. They offered up hundreds of millions of dollars, like $500 million, to help fund the stadium project. They've already approved it. Are Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa, are they ready to do something equal or at all? And they may not be in that position, but they probably see themselves as a better location and spot and more desirable geography of where Rays fans would be coming from. They don't have to cross the bridge anymore to get to St. Pete. This also could be, if the city of Tampa has reached out, this could be part of that cold feet thing I just talked about, where the Rays are reconsidering everything, business, finances, but also, location of the stadium, maybe everything that they had been pushing for. They finally sat down one day and said, wouldn't it be better over there instead of right here, what we're trying to do? It could be that. Tampa had previously felt like a door that was shut. I mean, as soon as those renderings came out, was it last April or May of 2024? And the Rays were moving forward, right? Again, here to stay. I think they meant here in St. Petersburg to stay, but it seemed like Tampa was a done deal, not a consideration. The Rays had made their choice, and now it's an option again, apparently, or it's not totally out of the equation. But I also want to realize it's impossible for any of this to exist publicly. I say this is educated instinct. There's no way that any politician that's part of Tampa is going to say, yeah, we've been talking to the Rays. How do you think that looks? How do you think that goes? It's almost like pandering and tampering. You can't do that when another city and county have a deal in place and they're just waiting for the Rays to sign it. You can't really do that officially, but you'd have to think that behind the scenes, to some degree, to some level, Tampa has reached out. And I also throw Orlando in that very same category and conversation. The Rays have likely had some Orlando contact. Now, in this case, I think Tampa might have reached out to the Rays. I think maybe the Rays are checking in on Orlando to a certain degree. And in reverse, like the Dreamers, the Orlando Dreamers, that's the group that they're called, the Barry Larkin group, they would be guilty of malpractice if they hadn't at least tried to be in touch with the Rays. Hey, where are you guys at? What are you doing? We're only 90 miles away. And quite honestly, Orlando, in this push that they've got, they can kind of sell themselves as only a half relocation. And they've got some precedent. Look at the Sacramento situation with the A's. I mean, it's not like it's a world away from Oakland. It is in terms of fan base and markets, like Orlando's not Tampa and Sacramento's not Oakland. But Orlando can say, well, this would be an easy thing for you to pull off. And even if you did the old temporary thing like the Sacramento Athletics are doing, come do that in Orlando. You don't have a place to play. We will take you in. See, it can be at different levels. The temporary level, or eventually the permanent level, or the temporary evolving into permanent level. Orlando has had to have reached out. Come play at the Disney complex, right? Steinbrenner Field's a temporary thing. The Yankees don't want you there forever. We'll take care of you for 2026 and beyond. And again, it's only 90 miles away. You don't have to have a lot of employees, maybe necessarily change their entire situation. Basically, it's not like moving halfway across the country. Also this, if you're the Orlando Dreamers, think about it from their perspective. They can present themselves as being ready for baseball expansion and have that be their number one focus. But the reality is Major League Baseball is never going to expand to Orlando so long as there's already a team in the Tampa Bay area. It's just too close. And then you got 3 Florida teams within a certain proximity. It's not going to happen. So Orlando needs either one of two things: the Rays to go elsewhere so they can ask for expansion, or they need the Rays to come to Orlando. That's got to be the way that the Dreamers view this. The Rays in their backyard is going to be a problem for them always until they have the Rays or the Rays are out of that backyard. So I would have to think the Rays likely have had some contact with Orlando one way or the other. And then the last educated instinct here out of all this, I think Major League Baseball has already told the Rays behind the scenes they'll support them no matter what. And when I mean support, I'm talking about the old whatever you need comment to get whatever the Rays ultimately want. The Rays don't know yet, I think, what they ultimately want to do, whether it's staying in St. Pete, whether it's going across the way to Tampa, whether it's going up the road to Orlando, whether it's exploring something else. You remember, baseball's not going to step in and say, well, this is a big problem. We need to sort this out. We're going to take this off your hands, Rays ownership and front office. That's not what they did with the A's situation. Remember, baseball voted unanimously back in 2023 in November to relocate the A's without even an expansion fee. Like there always was supposed to be one. It was never implemented. And then when it was time to implement it, they said, you know what, we'll waive it for you and we'll vote unanimously 30-0 to let you move. My point is that baseball is ultimately going to give Rays ownership, and whether it's Stu Sternberg or whether it's anybody else that buys the team, they're going to give them full leverage over this situation. You want to go to Orlando? No problem. You want to go somewhere else? No problem. Baseball is going to give them the wink and the nod. Whatever you need, we will let that happen for you, and we'll help you take care of it. Just let us know. We're like your waiter. We'll bring you whatever type of dish you want here. And for those who have said, and I'm laying this out, for those who have said, well, what about Rob Manfred and his commitment to Tampa Bay? because Rob Manfred was in the state of Florida. Rob Manfred in the last few months has recently said, hey, we're committed to this market. We're going to keep a baseball team here. Let's remember what Rob Manfred said back in 2016, specifically while visiting Oakland. It would be a mistake if Major League Baseball, he said, ever left Oakland in about 10 years. Well, here we are at the 9-year mark, and Major League Baseball has left Oakland. He flat out said it that way within the last 10 years, and it happened. And there's been no accountability back on that statement. And when that statement was brought back up to him, there was no real good reaction to it. So my point is, the commitments that you see right now are all talk unless they actually happen. Unless baseball does jump in and say, whoa, Rays, we cannot have you going to Orlando. We need a team here in Tampa Bay. We're going to but it won't happen that way. This is my educated instinct. It will not happen that way. Baseball's going to do whatever the Rays want and need whenever they figure that out. So here's the 3 situations. You've got the new stadium top left. We'll know by March 31st. You've got the roof, and that's how it looks from the inside of Tropicana Field right now. Isn't that an insane view? That is crazy. Will that get fixed or not? They've got to start. If they think they're going to have it ready by the start of 2026, they got to pay for it, and they got to set that up pretty soon here by the end of this month. And then there's Steinbrenner Field, where we're going to see the Rays battle through the elements and the weather and the conditions of a Florida summer throughout the baseball season. That should be interesting. That's the end of this video. Thanks for making it. Thumbs up down below. Appreciate that. Helps me, this video, and this channel. And one more thing, don't forget to go down there and subscribe so I can definitely see you back here next time.